afternoon, evening, friends, depending on wherever you are today. Welcome to Iran's very first panel discussion. Iran is a non-profit organization that I started to help bolster the fight for a more gender equal world. I'm really happy to be moderating this very interesting session today. The topic of discussion is feminist social movements. More specifically, today's discussion will focus on three main aspects of these movements: the impact of social media, catalysts of these movements, and the effect of political polarization. Let me first talk about the role that social media plays in these feminist movements, whether it propagates, enables, or it hinders. It allows for the movements to attain a wider scope. Online movements like the hashtag #MeToo movement and the hashtag #SlutWalk movement have gained a lot of international traction and have shaped this fight for gender equality to be at a wider playing field, one with a global audience. And the second theme, on the other hand, much like social media, is other catalysts that spark and propagate feminist social movements. For example, in 2012, the Nirbhaya rape case launched India into a new wave of feminism, the fourth wave, which enabled, through the use of intersectionality, a new scope. Moreover, let me move on to my third theme, the effect of political polarization. It is another important aspect that affects feminist social movements. In India, the Women's Reservation Bill has been a proposition in Indian Parliament for about 12 years. Yet this bill has not been passed in the Lok Sabha, while it has been passed in the Rajya Sabha. This bill aims to ensure a 33% reservation of seats for women in the parliament. This bill, along with other ones that are similar, have been introduced thrice in the parliament, but lapsed or resolution due to other problem complications in the Lok Sabha. Despite the uproar from both parties to pass these bills, there has been no passing of these kind of bills for women's reservation, and shows how party politics does play a role in the outcomes of feminist movements. These three aspects are what we will be exploring in more detail today. And so I'd like to move on to our panelists today. Before I do that, I would actually request the participants to share their questions on each of the topics by writing in the question section of this webinar. If you'd like a question that someone else has written, don't be shy to give it a quick thumbs up. That way I'll know which questions are popular and which ones to ask. I also have 3 polls that I will launch during the course of the webinar, and your response will be much appreciated. It is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce our panelists for today. First up, we have Aditi Rathore. She is a junior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation in the Mumbai Center. Her research focuses on inclusive development and gender issues. She has worked earlier as a project lead at Skill Development Institute that employs women in the Logistics Center. Aditi has also worked as a short-term consultant for the World Bank's Gender and Social Development Cluster, where she researched on women labor force participation in India. I think we should move on to our next part of the panel discussion, which is catalysts of these movements. Utanshi, Richa, actually, how far do you think intersectionality plays a catalyst for these movements? That was really well put. Thank you so much for that. Now we're going to move on to another audience question. So I'm launching my second poll. And this question is, what catalyst do you think has widened the scope of feminist movements the most? Again, this is a relativity question, so be sure to answer. Utanshi, what are your opinions on this? What do you think? Right. Thank you so much. Now that we've gotten some results, we can see that most of the audience, 63% actually, to be more precise, thinks that social media has widened the scope of feminist movements the most, relatively. Richa, what are your thoughts on this? Great. So now we can move on to the third part of the panel, which is the effect of political polarization. So, Richa, you've been posted in 5 different countries. In what way do you think the political system of a country influences the outcomes and approaches to feminist social movements? Thank you so much. Aditi, what ways do you think that politics has had an effect on feminist social movements in India, now that we've looked at a more global scope? That was a very interesting argument and very well put. Thank you so much. So this moves on to like our last question, our last audience-based poll. And I have launched it, and it is: what role do you think politics plays in India in feminist movements, hindering them or enabling them? We don't have much time, so I'll just ask you to say, all three of you, to say just 1 minute of what you believe. So, Richa, would you like to go first? On the contrary, the audience seems to think otherwise. 81%, which is a big majority, think that they are hindering them. And Utanshi, what do you think about that? Just to take a few questions from the audience. Again, try to keep it as short as possible. Limit it to 30 seconds if you can. The most liked question here is by Ananya Modi. What responsibilities do Indian women with a social media platform or other types of influence have in amplifying the voices of women who do not? Similarly, what roles can white women in the United States play in uplifting the issues of women of color there, as well as developing countries, to make the global feminist movement more inclusive? I think this is going to be our last question. And again, just 30-second answers from all of you. This is a question from Mr. Anil Bhala. With all the positives of social media justice, how do you guard against mob justice? How do you reestablish the primacy of reason over emotion? I think Richa, then followed by Aditi, then Utanshi. Unfortunately, we won't be able to ask any or answer any more questions. These are great questions, and I'll send them to the panelists and try to get back to you with your email IDs. But we are running way over time. So thank you so much. I want to first thank all three of you. You are great panelists, and really well and eloquently put all your answers. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to end by saying, in the famous words of Emma Watson in one of her speeches, if not me, who? If not now, when? So this conversation hopefully helped bolster a new conversation and new solutions and ideas to already pre-existing topics. And we hope that this would be a good takeaway for the panel overall. So thank you so much for everybody attending, and I think we will be signing off now.